speaking of growth forecasts, where's the growth going to be? Well, it's not going to be in the United States, right? So we know the United States is slowing down. We are seeing growth in other places. Look, there's a tremendous amount of angst around China right now, and here's China. I just want to make this quick comment. I put out a note to you yesterday, came with this morning's trading idea, the Daily Digest. I talked about China, the protests there. Look, the United States and Western powers are salivating over any kind of protests in the streets of China. And they're going to try to make more of them than they really are. So therefore, if you noticed in the media, if you've turned on the news, you've seen China, 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 China. Well, it is true that these protests in China are unique, and I tried to explain that in my latest note in this digest. However, as I also told you in that note, we do not expect China to lose its grip on power whatsoever. So this is kind of if there's any kind of expectation that this is going to mean anything, ultimately, we would say no, it doesn't mean anything at all. Beijing, people don't realize how much of a power grip that Xi Jinping has upon China. He has pretty much just cemented himself into power, and there is practically no one who is going to be able to challenge him. Anyone who could have challenged him has already been dealt with. He's already done this. And in fact, you may have even seen it at the latest 20th Chinese Communist Party Congress, where he had one of his potential enemies just kind of escorted out of the building. I mean, so this guy, the guy running China, does not have hardly anybody who could really stand up to him and kind of speak for the people. So we don't see that happening. We see that there's a lot of frustration. We see there's a lot of angst. But China is going to save face, in our opinion, and we don't expect this to really materialize into much, at least for the time being. So I know the media has been breathless about it here in the United States. That's because they want to see something like this. Many companies are really wanting to be able to get into China, and so they do want some sort of uprising that changes the landscape, if you will, for corporations getting into China. But that's just that we don't see that at all. And as far as the growth rate goes, China's going to grow more next year than it is this year. Remember, there's all kinds of scary stories about that. The West is always, but we've been telling you this ever since we've begun this service, ever since we started Follow the Money. And we've done these coaching calls. I've told you over and over again, the West loves to portray China in this certain way and always talks about how it's going to crash and always talk. We've been hearing about this forever, right? China over the last 10 years, it's difficult to find any nation that has experienced more financial prosperity than China over the last 10 years, let alone the last 20 or 30. So, it's just been simply astonishing what China has done. And when you look at the 2023 forecast, China is going to be going at 4.5. If the United States media really wants to get, spooky, they need to start looking at their own financials. They need to start looking at their own GDP. They need to start looking at their own debt loads. They need to start looking, they're always fascinated about China and China's going to explode. Remember back in 2011, we were also fighting this Eurozone panic. People were like, the whole Eurozone is going to collapse, and the ECB. And we were saying, no, they're not. Look at the United States. They're the financial slob here. They're the ones who are, wrecking their economy. And that's what they're continuing to do. So the United States is digging a big hole, but it loves to point out the speck in their brother's eye, right? They love to point out the things that are happening in China or somewhere else, right? Especially when those people are their competitors. China is going to grow at 4.5% next year, according to economists, even with all of the factors that we know factored in. If they change their trajectory at all with COVID, we're probably going to see higher growth. So 4.5% growth. When the last time the United States had 4.5% growth in a normal year, just like in a normal year where it wasn't like they were pumping in $9 trillion into the economy, just like on a normal year, when did they get a 4.5% growth rate? Got to go back for a long time. Okay, so the United States would love to have China's growth rate, but all they want to do is demonize them. Okay, look at India. India is going to have also the biggest growth rate here. So don't discount India whatsoever. India is a powerhouse, likely to be bigger than China. Over the next decade or two. It's going to take a while, but India certainly on pace. If it continues its growth rate, its economy is going to be massive as well. It already is. Indonesia, also a bright spot here. Notice this, 5% growth rate here over the next couple of years. That's really a bright spot. As well as the Philippines, right? People, may not be thinking about the Philippines, but that's another space. So when you're looking around the globe and saying, where's the money being made? Where's the growth occurring? China, India, Indonesia, Philippines. It's Asia, guys. It's not Europe, and it's not America, right? The GDP here, the only way we get GDP growth is by printing money. It takes $4, $5 of stimulus to get $1 of GDP growth in this country. It's become outrageous. So anyway, just a little note there on GDP growth forecasts that kind of brings some clarity to all the breathless reporting we hear about China and what's happening in Asia.